Well, let's start off with the Go Chargers.
Go.
Go Chargers. Did I hear a rumor? Is Schwarzenegger running for president? Did you hear that stuff?
I don't know. I know. He's been promoting the self-help book. I've seen him in all the
born in the
media.
United States or some weird. I don't know what the rules are.
He's not, but I mean, obviously, still active in terms of discussing. But I've seen him like everywhere. I've seen him on all the morning shows and all the talk shows, and
I assume he's still
everywhere.
A Charger fan. That's what we're saying.
I would think so.
Even though that was San Diego.
As the former governor of California.
There it is. So I think he's still grandfathered in, even though they're in L.A. these days. They're going to be in New York next week. Going to take on the Jets on Monday Night Football. Now, look, I am when the Jets got off to the slow start after the injury to Rodgers, even though they won week 1, they lost in the next 2. And I looked in it, was saying it here, their win total at the beginning of the year was 9.5.
Yes.
And then once Rodgers went out and they lost those next 2 games, it went down to 5.5. And I was like, man, you just don't see 4-game windows for middles. So I hopped in there. Now I'm getting worried that the original 9.5 could be back in play because the Jets figure out ways to win. I don't know how they won today, but they did win in the Meadowlands.
Well, you and Bob Wischusen, who does college basketball and college football for ESPN. He's also the radio voice of the Jets at the ESPN radio affiliate in New York, is their flagship. And they were airing, the call of the field goal in overtime. And he goes, and the Jets have won, and I don't know how.
It is one of the more remarkable, if you had the Giants money line, and I know some people that did, it's an all-time bad beat. Graham Gano misses a chip. Graham Gano has been a fantastic kicker.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm friends with him, so I'm carrying a little water here. But he normally doesn't miss those little chippies. He did. It left some time in the clock. I don't know what else Brian Daboll's supposed to do in that situation. I felt like it was the right move to kick the field goal, try to win the game. You're under a minute to go.
Yeah.
And somehow the Jets positioned themselves to get the game-tying field goal. And then you felt like once this thing got to overtime, Giants just couldn't use the forward pass, and it was done.
You didn't expect that they were going to be going. They had 1st and 10 on their own 25, 24 seconds left to go. Zach Wilson hits Garrett Wilson for 29 yards, and then another 29-yarder to Lazard, just defensive breakdowns.
Spike it with 1.
Yeah, and Zerline, Greg Deleg kicked the field goal in regulation and in overtime. And, you look at Zach Wilson, not great today, 17 to 36 for 240 and a touchdown, no interceptions, but
no interceptions.
When he needed to make the plays, though, because if you look at the stats, it's like, man, he had a terrible game. And this was an ugly game, I think, on all sides. But when he needed to make those throws, he did. And that's a good sign, I think, at least for the Jets, at least something positive.
We talk about it like, Kirk Cousins and where his next home could be. Zach Wilson has a place in the NFL. It's a backup quarterback.
Yeah, and look, maybe, we'll see if they can develop him into something. I hate to, throw a guy out after his 2nd or 3rd year, but like some of these guys, though, like we saw in Tennessee today, like I'm not wanting to crown Will Levis, but I don't think Malik Willis is going to be seeing the field anytime soon for Tennessee. And some guys that are backup quarterbacks.
But to go from 1-2 to 4-3, as the Jets have done now here with Zach Wilson, I believe 3 in a row now for the Jets. Look, it doesn't really matter how. They're just going to ask how many at the end of the year. And now it's another winnable game, even though the Chargers come in on Monday night favored by 1.5. The reason why I made that wager when it got down to 5.5 for the middle was because of the defense. And you talked about it with the Cowboys game against the Eagles. The Jets have a defense that's going to keep them in just about every game, right? Kept them even in the Chiefs game that they lost. The only one they haven't been in was week 2 against Dallas. That's the only game they were really manhandled in the defense.
And that was Wilson's first start, of course, after that big win over Buffalo. So you kind of knew he was going into the Lions' den, at least in that game.
Well, is this a bad spot for the Jets now because they've won some games here recently that maybe you feel like, I don't know how they won them, but they won them? Or is this house money for Robert Saleh as Aaron Rodgers tries to make a miraculous comeback from a torn Achilles, which we've never seen anybody come back in the history of the NFL and play the same year. But every week we see him throwing on the sidelines, which is surreal. But Zach Wilson, as you mentioned, makes enough plays. Can he make enough plays against this Charger team?
He can. I'm trying to think of what I would want to do, if anything, with this game, because people didn't want to lay. There were a lot of people lukewarm on laying the Chargers at 8.5 at home against Tyson Bagent at home. Are they really going to want to lay them on the road here? I think this could be a lowest total, even though it's 42.5. It may go down based on what we saw. Both those games of the teams going under today. So, I could certainly see the Jets getting teased up through the key numbers of 3 and 7 up to 8.5, because there is a couple 2.5s out there. I think at DK it's 1.5. Most shops don't have a number. They will tomorrow, but I do think the Chargers will open favored on Monday morning, and probably should, because I think that they, all things considered on a neutral, I think that they're the better team than the Jets. I really do.
I agree.
And they certainly had higher expectations, not putting Rodgers aside, higher expectations in terms of the current construction of the New York Jets. But looks like the Chargers, and I know we were talking about that earlier, relatively unscathed injury. I mean, you're never totally unscathed in the NFL, but the Jets have so many guys on the offensive line banged up, and that's why I think you see the Chargers as a small favorite on the road. We know Vera Tucker out for the season with the Achilles. Dwayne Brown's been on IR. Connor McGovern left the game today. Wes Schweitzer left the game today with a leg injury. Joe Tippmann, battling it. So a lot of their depth guys are getting hurt on the offensive line, and that's why you're seeing the Chargers, I think, as a small favorite.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.